Sorry, it's a little bit informal. So Medable is a company based out of Palo Alto, California. We're a startup that I founded the company in 2014, and our mission is to get effective therapies to patients faster. So my background, I was a physician scientist at Stanford, and I was a researcher of rare disease. So I was researching some of the most rare conditions in dermatology, and in addition, I was researching identical twins with these conditions and looking at how the expressed genome could actually tell us about the health of a given patient. And in identical twins had a set of genetic controls that enabled me to extract the meaning of environment and life choices and medications we take in true context around determinants of health. So as an example, I had a pair of twins who were 22-year-old males who had a condition called systemic sclerosis. And one identical twin developed the condition at 16, and the other identical twin didn't develop the condition until the age of 20 years old. And there were radical life differences in the choices that these twins had made. And some of the questions we were evaluating were, were decisions like smoking cigarettes or living in a particular location or UV exposure actually contributing to the manifestation or difference in the development of the disease? And so through this process, as you can imagine, it's extremely challenging to bring the context of how we live into a research setting. Right now, a clinical trial is generally just the data that we capture by visiting our doctor, but there's a lot more to our lives, and in fact, as patients and as people, we're a lot more alike than we are dissimilar from a genetic perspective, and the decisions we make really actually drive our health outcomes. So we need to be able to capture data beyond the sparse and siloed walls of a clinic, but really in our daily lives. Additionally, in researching rare disease and identical twins, I realized just how limited the current modality or methodology for clinical trials is. We're bringing patients who just live in the immediate geographic area into a clinic. But the reality is, people live with conditions all over the world, and wouldn't it be amazing if these people could also benefit from the research insights and also contribute to the fund of knowledge and the advancement and the creation of new medications? And finally, in my course as a physician scientist, I became very aware of how the instruments we're using to measure disease are also antiquated. So, you can imagine right now, as an example, if you go to the ophthalmologist, you're going to look at an eye chart, right? Maybe you do that at best every year. But is there an opportunity for us to actually recreate how we measure disease and do it in the context of our daily lives in a much more personalized and potentially accurate way? So Medable is really on a mission to redefine or reinvent how clinical trials are conducted. And we do this by creating this unified patient data. And this is a big part of what fuels the Digitome. We also enable a global study reach by enabling people to participate in research from their mobile phones, from the most ubiquitous computing device in the world, which is mobile. We add to this a suite of connected devices and environmental context so that we can get a much more holistic picture of what someone's health is and enable this research kind of anytime, anywhere. So as I mentioned, we are a startup out of Silicon Valley. We work with a lot of companies worldwide, and our goal is to create this unified data ecosystem where research can happen anytime, anywhere by capturing data directly from patients, integrating additional data sets from EMRs and claims data, applying to this algorithms that can extract insights, and then providing access to individual patient participants, doctors, and biopharmaceutical companies so they can really understand what's happening in the clinical trials. Finally, automating a lot of the work that has to happen, as you can imagine, these massive data sets, and then aggregating the data across all of the people who are participating and across the different conditions. So through this unified data ecosystem, we've really been kind of reinventing how clinical trials happen. And this is really important in considering what the human digitome could be and how, what types of data actually fuel it. clinical trials, importantly, I think they seem like this nebulous thing, but at the end of the day, it's really about, in general, a connection with a physician and enabling data to be captured and insights to be extracted from that. And when I look at clinical trials versus regular healthcare, it's exponentially more complex because not only do you have the complexity of a traditional healthcare visit, but you also have the fact that we're delivering a standardized protocol across patients, often in many, many countries, across different types of physicians, different languages, and we're doing this sometimes over the course of 3 to 5 years. So it's really important that we do this as a connected team. And this is really some of the learning that our company's had as we've been innovating in this space. So the way that we do this is with a unified platform that captures data from patients. It brings in additional data streams from EMR, claims data, devices. It applies the artificial intelligence or machine learning capabilities to extract insights, and then enables a patient-governed data access system. Fundamentally, what this enables is research anytime, anywhere. And personalized protocols for a given person in a research study that help direct them in their healthcare journey and also collect really rich data for a clinical trial. Additionally, we collect sensor data in a certain subset of research studies so that we can really create a high fidelity representation of a given person and understand, what is your heart rate, your respiratory rate, your skin temperature, what is your physiology in your everyday life. All of this data is brought in back to the physician. It's analyzed and aggregated intelligently so that they can actually make clinical decisions while we capture this much more robust picture of human health. So over the last 2 years, this has really been the fundamental mission of our company. And we've created really a network across patients and researchers, biopharma, and academic medical centers. And through this was really one of our kind of important discoveries. What we realized was that, digital isn't just a new form factor. Digital is actually a new science. And when you look at the data that we're capturing in a digitally enabled healthcare ecosystem or a digitally enabled clinical trial, it's actually as different from clinical data as genomic data is different from, say, a blood draw. And this data is extremely vast. So our company, in partnership with some very key partners, have created and are underway of building the Human Digitome, which is the first digital representation of human health and disease. And it's a representation across conditions, across individuals, and across populations that leverages a patient-directed data governance system while providing an ecosystem for collaborative insight derivation. And why do we think this matters? I think we live in an era where we are always told more data, more data, more data, and we're all kind of wondering, okay, well, let's see the benefits of more data. And what we're understanding, although we're very early in the process, that's important about the Human Digitome is that if we have a granular representation of health, we may be able to move beyond a fundamental limitation in healthcare right now, which is we currently classify disease as a binary state, right? I either do or do not have a condition. But the reality is that health and disease are actually of far greater complexity. I mean, they're actually of quantum complexity, but even much greater. Say we don't have quantum computing yet, they're certainly more complex than a binary yes or no. So one of our initial goals with the Digitome is actually to be able to detect disease and health in an individual as a deviation or the creation of greater disorder, to really begin to understand health and disease at the level of homeostasis, and to begin to understand therapeutics, not just to treat a disease, but as a multidimensional approach that can be used to restore homeostasis at the moment that homeostasis is deviated from. So, how do we do this? I think it's really through partnerships. It's through learning, through many rich experiences, through working with patients doing clinical trials, capturing a large amount of data, and getting a lot of smart people together to really think about, okay, we've got a digital representation, let's say, of Parkinson's disease or lupus. Now we have that across 100 people. How can we get that to be across 1,000 people? What is the next version of this look like? Not just 10 data types, but 100 data types. And how do we extract meaning and understanding and actually relay that insight back to an individual to tell them earlier your medication is or isn't working, or your sleep deprivation is contributing to your symptoms, to really provide this powerful data insight back to a person, to an individual, to empower them to make healthier choices and to make decisions that will actually make them feel better. And that's really the mission of the Human Digitome. It's largely derived at this point from clinical research data and through these partnerships. So I'd be really excited to talk with anyone in the audience who's interested in clinical research, who's interested in big data and healthcare, and interested in the Digitome in general. All right, I don't know if we have time for questions, but